Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back, Daily Boxing News. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. We got some boxing to talk about today. Mainly, the fight coming up this weekend between Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez and David Benavidez. But there's some other fights we're going to discuss as well. Shout out to Dominica. Shout out to Arco, Tawheed, Warts, Red Sonic, Triple A, Eldon Joe, Stu the Q, James Clifford. Shout out to Mark. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. He says, get the likes up. Have a great week, folks. Big up James Clifford every time. Let's get those likes up, people. Really helps these streams get seen. 47 concurrent viewers, only 6 likes. Let's get them up to at least, let's say 23. Big up Railway Unboxing fan, Taylor Blair. Luke, Gypsy Queen Partridge. Shout out to you. Big up Sean. What's up, what's up? How many of you guys even realized the Zurdo Ramirez David Benavidez fight was this weekend? And how many of you realized it's on Amazon Prime, not on DAZN? It's a PBC show. Hasn't been particularly well promoted, has it? Wave says Amazon Prime do no promotion. Indeed. It has flown way under the radar. Wave says, pretty sure it's on DAZN as well. Is that right? A dual broadcast, DAZN and Amazon Prime? Are you sure? So perhaps Amazon Prime in the States and DAZN in other territories. Okay, Ashkip says it's on DAZN here in Norway. All right. But given that the fight is in the States, and they are two American-based fighters, I know Zurdo's Mexican. Well, both of them are of Mexican heritage. Zurdo's actually born and raised in Mexico. Benavidez, a Mexican-American, a Chicano. Presumably, Amazon Prime are handling most of the promotion rather than DAZN, and not doing a particularly good job at it. Then again, it's PBC's job, right? They are the promoter. So it's them who's not doing a good job of it. Eldon Joe says, amazing what you can do when there's money to wash. Okay. Stu the Q says, been looking forward to it, but a promo didn't make the budget. Indeed. Railway Unboxing fan says, also, why is it on pay-per-view? Well, among the Mexican and broader Latino community in the United States, it is a big fight. You would have thought anyway, or a pretty big fight. It's not Canelo big, but it's a pretty big fight. Zurdo's got a decent number of fans. Benavidez does too. And with PBC, pretty much anything is on pay-per-view. That's just the way PBC do it. I don't think that they can actually pay anyone without putting everything on pay-per-view. Big up June Sports, big up Kieran Malcolm. James Clifford says, it's of course on DAZN pay-per-view or DAZN Ultimate, aka as pay-per-view. Is it also DAZN pay-per-view? Because if it's on Amazon Prime in the States, I kind of get it. But to be on DAZN pay-per-view globally, outside the States, that's a bit off. Telstar says, does Al Heyman care anymore? Shout out to Busy Clergy. He says, I'm not a fan of Benavidez, unlike Opataya, as Benavidez doesn't finish his opponents. Well, he finished Anthony Yard last time out in brutal fashion. Askip says pay-per-view here. Wow. So Zurdo versus Benavidez is pay-per-view in Norway. That's crazy. Matt Borgerson says Benavidez does not have good footwork at all. He will get outboxed one day. I actually think he's got decent footwork for a pressure fighter. You know, he isn't Lomachenko, but he's pretty good at cutting off the ring. He often turns southpaw in order to shut off the exits when a fighter is trying to slide away to one side, well, to their own left side. If there's an orthodox fighter, to their own left side, when they're trying to slide away across the ropes, he'll turn southpaw and block them. Ward says, what did Norwegians ever do to deserve that? All right, 1 sec, folks. I just need to switch something off. Be back in 1 second. Hold tight. And I'm back. All right, so let's get into the boxing talk here. Again, shout out to everybody in the live chat. We'll come on to your questions and comments. We'll start off with the main topic since we have already started getting into it. David Benavidez versus Zurdo Ramirez, Fight Week preview. That's the fight listed on BoxRec. Ramirez, the champion at cruiserweight, 48-1. That one defeat to Dmitry Bivol back down at super middleweight. He's 34 years of age. Southpaw 6'2.5". 75-inch reach. Going up against Benavidez, 31-0. Like Ramirez did a few years ago, Benavidez coming up from super middleweight, light heavyweight, etc. 29 orthodox, 6'2", 74.5-inch reach. You can see Ramirez's last few fights on screen there. Uniel Dorticus, he won that by UD. Chris Billam-Smith, another UD. Arsene Glamarian, UD again, that's where he picked up his first cruiserweight title. Joe Smith Jr., that was his first fight at, was it first fight at cruiserweight? I think it was. Joe Smith Jr., of course, used to be a light heavyweight as well. Then the loss to Dmitry Bivol, which was at 175. Before that, Dominic Bosel. Benavidez has lost 6 fights. Did I say last 5? Excuse me if I did. Last 6. Anthony Yard, who he demolished. David Morrell, who he put a serious beating on, but Morrell lasted the distance. Alexander Vozdek, who hung tough in there against Benavidez. That was Benavidez's first fight at 175. Demetrius Andrade, he demolished him. That's back down at super middleweight. Caleb Plant, he put a hell of a beating on Plant. Plant must have had a really, really tough camp and prepared for the absolute worst, because how on earth he got through that fight and saw the final bell, I will never know. He took a terrible beating in that fight. David Lemieux was stopped as well back in 2022. So that's the last 6 fights for Ramirez and Benavidez. Ramirez, at super middleweight and light heavyweight, he was quite an aggressive fighter. But at cruiserweight, he has developed and evolved into more of a boxer puncher. His footwork has improved. kind of glides around the ring. He's not the fastest guy in the world, so he can be a bit deceptive because he appears to be slow, but he's very technically sound and he's tough. He's got a very good chin, very high work rate. He's got a good boxing brain, and he gets the job done. David Benavidez is pretty much an out-and-out pressure fighter. Yeah, there's spots where he can move around the ring a little bit, but for the most part, it's attack, attack, attack with David Benavidez. Very fast hands, tremendous hand speed, great work rate, pretty good power. He's not like a devastating one-punch man, but he hits hard enough. I mean, just look at what he did to Anthony Yarde. And he puts his shots together in combination. I've said this so many times about David Benavidez. He throws these unusual punch sequences, and that's what catches his opponents off guard. That's why he's able to hurt guys and sometimes stop guys, is because he throws punches in the type of sequences which opponents are not used to. So they get caught when they're trying to block, thinking a punch is coming from a particular angle, but no, it's a different punch coming from an unsuspecting angle. So yeah, very creative with his offense. I mean, people remember in the Anthony Yarde fight, there was a moment where he threw like, what was it? 10 hooks in a row or something? Was it all left hooks or all right hooks? I forget now, but that's the kind of thing David Benavidez will do. It'll catch you off guard with weird punch sequences. Now, Matt Borgeson, big up Matt Borgeson every time. He thinks that David Benavidez doesn't have good footwork. I think Benavidez has pretty good footwork. Again, it's not like Lomachenko footwork. It's not Muhammad Ali footwork. It's the kind of footwork that pressure fighters develop in order to cut the ring off, break opponents down, etc. Also, Benavidez is one of these guys who doesn't load up on every shot. He is perpetual motion when he's attacking you. So he'll throw little throwaway shots just to keep your defense busy when you're moving around, when you're trying to get away from him. He'll just touch you with little throwaway shots. Then once he has you up against the ropes, or once you plant your feet and decide to fire back, he plants his feet real quick, loads up, and throws heavy, heavy punches. So he has a particular style, he has a particular approach and technique, and it works very, very well for him. I personally like David Benavidez's style. I think he's got a great jab, one of the more underrated jabs in boxing. It's fast, it's snappy, it's painful, and as I say, a great combination puncher with really fast hands. I've said this repeatedly ever since this fight got signed. Even though this is Benavidez's first fight at cruiserweight, and obviously Ramirez has been at cruiserweight for quite a while now, although they both started their careers at 168, I think David Benavidez is going to win this fight. I say he wins it on points. I think it will be competitive. I think Ramirez will have his moments, but ultimately, I think the speed of Benavidez and the creative offense will be the difference, and he'll emerge victorious and become a 3-weight world champion. I completely a stoppage for Benavidez, but again, Zurdo is so tough. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he does manage to go the distance. He will have his moments because he is a good technical fighter. And as I say, he's been fighting at the cruiserweight, in the cruiserweight division for quite a while now. So he's acclimatized to, fighting big, strong guys and whatnot. So Benavidez's physical strength shouldn't really bother him. But as I say, I think it's going to be the speed and the creative combinations and whatnot, cutting off the ring, etc., that'll get the job done for David Benavidez. But what say you guys? How do you see this one going? Wave says Benavidez wins this comfortably. Am I making Gary in Africa? No. Gary is Nigeria. That's West Africa. Where I live in Africa, there's nothing like Gary. Telstar says Zurdo works in small steps, very coordinated. Yeah, Benavidez isn't Bivol, but he's got Bivol type hand speed. So again, while I think the hand speed ultimately will be one of the deciding factors, he doesn't have Bivol's foot speed or footwork. Again, I think he's got good footwork in terms of as a pressure fighter cutting off the ring, but yeah, he doesn't have Bivol's technique of jumping in and out of range and not being there to get hit. Benavidez is there to get hit, but I just feel like he'll be too fast ultimately. Big up Matt, he says, what's stopping Zurdo from hurting Benavidez? Well, he could. Zurdo isn't a massive puncher, and Benavidez has been wobbled a few times, so, it's possible, but again, Zurdo really isn't a big puncher like that. I mean, just look at the records there. The last time that Zurdo got a stoppage, 4 years ago. Was that back down at 175? Matt says he's not a puncher at cruiserweight. Yeah, but look at the punches that Bivol's been in with. He doesn't totally dominate them the way he dominated Zurdo. There were points there where it looked like Zurdo was going to get stopped in that fight. He was so overwhelmed by the speed and all the shots coming in. Bivol got wobbled by Joe Smith Jr. quite bad. And he tends to be quite careful at times when he's fighting big punches. But against Zurdo, he wasn't really careful at all. He just tore into him. Matt says Benavidez isn't a cruiserweight. He's as much of a cruiserweight as Zurdo is, in my opinion. He's very big. I mean, he might not be quite as big as Zurdo, but I don't think there's much difference in size, personally. Wayne says, why is Zurdo already hinting at retirement? He will retire, never fighting Jai. Is he hinting at retirement? I wasn't aware of that. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. JJ says, all love from Penge, sir. Okay, big up the Penge massive. Busy Clergy says, death by 1,000 cuts for Benavidez. Benavidez all day, says Fernie G. Maybe even a stoppage due to Zurdo's corner. Well, Zurdo walks around very, very heavy. From what I've heard, he's like over 220 pounds. He might be close to 220 in the ring for his cruiserweight fights, all right? He's big. But David Benavidez is also huge at 175. Easily hitting the cruiserweight limit when he fights at 175. Absolutely massive. The Wave says, Alois is the king of Penge. What happened to Alois? Indeed, what did happen to Alois? Last I remember of him was when he struggled with Ellis Zorro. That was a very disappointing performance. Oh, wow. B. Wayne says, he said, the end was near, meaning career, yesterday on Fight Hype. That's interesting. Big up Supersized Fries. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if Zurdo uses timing to neutralize Benavidez' speed and pulls off the upset. Okay. Supersized Fries not ruling out the upset there. And I sense that Matt Borgerson is on the same page. So you're not alone, Matt. Supersized Fries is also kind of thinking along those same lines, that maybe Zurdo's boxing skills and timing can neutralize the speed. They do say timing beats speed. That's one of the old adages in boxing. Timing beats speed. Yeah, the fight is this weekend, Kieran. It crept up, didn't it? Because the promotion has been so poor. I didn't even realize it was happening this weekend until earlier on today. Crept up very silently. It's a PBC fight, and they obviously don't have the budget these days to really promote things. And by the way, this is a bit of a coup for PBC. To get this fight, it's the biggest and probably best fight they've put on for years now. Unless I'm forgetting something. Stu the Q says Zurdo couldn't time Benavidez if he had a stopwatch. Anyway, we'll come back to this fight. I want to move on to some other fights that have just been announced and get your take on it. In fact, no. There's another fight happening this weekend before we get to the announcements. Another big fight, this time in Japan. Saturday, May 2nd, Tokyo Dome, Tokyo. The famous Tokyo Dome, where Mike Tyson lost his unbeaten record, getting knocked out in 10 rounds by Buster Douglas back in February of 1990. That very same Tokyo Dome. But this time it hosts Naoya Inoue versus Junto Nakatani. This is obviously a big fight in the super bantamweight division, an all-Japanese affair. Both guys 32-0. Inoue, multi-weight world champion, 33 years of age, going up against Nakatani, southpaw, who's 28. Inoue 5'5", Nakatani listed at 5'8". The reach is only about an inch in it. Now, personally, I'm very, very confident that Inoue wins this fight. Nakatani can punch. He's got the southpaw thing going for him. Inoue's been dropped in a few fights, been hurt in a few fights. Seems to be susceptible on his left side. The reason I'm so confident of an Inoue win, though, is partly because of the fact that Nakatani struggled recently against Reyes, but also because his punches have a bit of a loop on them. Now, that's not to say that there's no use for looping punches, because Alexander Usyk throws some great looping shots in order to get round a guard, in order to blindside you, come outside your peripheral vision, and hit you with a big one. With Usyk, they're strategic, right? With Nakatani, I don't think there's so much strategic. It's just more biomechanics, more technique. There's a lot of loop on his shots. On top of that, his range control and footwork is nowhere near as good as Inoue. And although he can hit, I don't think he hits like Inoue. I think that Inoue will be able to punch in between those looping shots. I think he'll be able to use the superior foot speed and footwork to take advantage of Nakatani's inferior range control. And I think he will win the fight either quite comfortably on points or maybe stop his man in the second half of the fight. That's my prediction. Give me your predictions in the live chat. What do you guys think? Shout out to Surviving Sobriety. It's a great name. He says, I don't think Ramirez has the spirit of Plant. So are you saying that Ramirez gets stopped here? Surviving Sobriety? Is that what you're inferring? No caller ID says Terra Moana just got a first round KO this morning. Yeah, I heard that. I haven't yet seen the fight. Another first round KO for Terra Moana. You know what? Even though he might be fighting pies, they're doing the right thing with him, keeping him active. It's better that a guy fights a pie once a month than fights, you know, a tough journeyman twice a year or 3 times a year. What I'm getting at here is what they're doing with Terra Moana right now is what they should have been doing with Itama all last year. If he's going to fight pies, fight him regularly. But yeah, big up Surviving Sobriety. He said, I don't think Ramirez has the spirit of Plant. And I would agree with that. I don't think if he's taking that kind of beating. But then again, let me just pull that back a little bit. You know, Plant showed unbelievable heart with the beating he was taking to stay in there. In fact, no, let me remix it. The jury's out. Ramirez is very tough. He's got a great chin. The question is, if he's taking a beating, will he just try and hang in there? Or will he continue to try and win? I think he'll be competitive. I don't think he's just going to take a one-sided beating for the whole fight. I think he'll be competitive in there. But ultimately, the speed and the pace and the creative offense, I think, of Benavidez will be too much for him. But big up Surviving Sobriety. Big up Busy Clergy. He says, how do you see Benavidez versus Opataya unfolding? Benavidez versus Whittaker. At this stage, Benavidez would eat Ben Whittaker for breakfast easily inside 4 or 5 rounds. That's not even a fight as far as I'm concerned right now. That's just a complete mismatch. Benavidez versus Opataya, I would pick Opataya. It's an interesting fight, but I do think Opataya will be a bit too big and hard-hitting, bit too mobile. I reckon he'd probably get the job done. I'd give Opataya maybe a 65% chance of victory against Benavidez. 35% isn't nothing, right? So I think Benavidez will be in there with a shot, but I would favor Opataya. Much appreciated to Busy Clergy for the super chat. He says, I am absolutely over the moon about this Inoue Nakatani fight. Inoue will fold Nakatani as a Daily Gazette. Okay. Because you're over the moon, does that mean you're a big Inoue fan? Because normally people are over the moon about a fight because they think it's going to be super competitive and they're not sure who's going to win. Like with the Fabio Wardley-Daniel Dubois fight. I'm so on the fence about that fight. That's why I'm looking forward to it, because I'm really not sure who's going to win. But I guess you're an Inoue fan. You think he's going to fold Nakatani like a newspaper. Shout out to Busy Clergy. Surviving Sobriety says, I think David's pressure breaks and stops Zurdo Ramirez. Okay. Fernie G is going with the underdog, Nakatani. Joey Real Gamer's also going with Nakatani. Okay. I mean, Inoue has shown some vulnerability over the past few years. So I'm not going to say it's a crazy pick. Surviving Sobriety says, Bivol broke him mentally. David will be too much. Matt says, agreed, but the Zurdo hate is insane. Is there Zurdo hate? I mean, maybe over there in the States. I'm not sure. I don't really notice any Zurdo hate these days, at least. I think back when he was a super middleweight, yeah, there was a lot of negativity about him, and maybe at light heavyweight too, especially after the Bivol fight. But since he's moved up to cruiserweight and started winning, and winning well, my perception among the UK boxing fraternity is that he's quite well respected now. Fernie G says, Zurdo is virtually unknown here. Only boxing fans know him. Well, maybe over there in NYC, but how about in Cali? Or how about in New Mexico or Texas or one of these other states, Arizona, that has a big Mexican population? Wayne says, if Inoue wins by early KO, where does that rank him pound for pound? Well, most people have already got him top 3 pound for pound anyway. Or top 2 now that Crawford is retired. But personally, I'm not really big on pound for pound lists. I'll leave that to other people because it's such an abstract concept. Surviving Sobriety says, I have no hate for Zurdo, it's just my opinion. Surviving Sobriety responding to Matt, he has no hate. Zurdo Ramirez, just his opinion. I certainly don't have any hate for Zurdo either. I respect him a lot. I really respect the way he's turned his career around, you know? After that Bivol fight, where he was totally dominated, and I thought that fight would be competitive, by the way. I was very surprised by how one-sided it was. People totally writ him off, or a lot of people did, after that performance, and thought, if he's moving up to cruiserweight, he's not going to do any better. But he did do better, a lot better. So I've got massive respect for Zurdo Ramirez and what he's done. Cash Machine says, was Zurdo not changing his tactics against Bivol due to lack of heart or lack of boxing IQ? No, he's got plenty of boxing IQ, and I think he's got plenty of heart too. He was just overwhelmed by the speed. He was frozen by the speed. It was just, the punches were coming in too fast. And whenever he would even think about countering, Bivol would step back with that old, what people like to call now, the Soviet style. Fast, straight punches, then the step back to avoid the counters, then jumping back in with fast, straight punches. He was just completely overwhelmed, you know? Most people that have boxed, right, know how that feels, especially early on during your boxing journey, when you're a youngster and you're sparring people much more experienced than you. Sometimes you just get in there with someone who's just so much better, faster. They think 3-4 steps ahead of you. And you're just getting hit with shots from all over the place. You can't even think about mounting an effective attack, because before you've even got into a position to be able to throw a shot, more punches are hitting you. So he was just totally overwhelmed. The speed was too much for him. Couldn't keep up with it. Rem says Zurdo fights like he's stuck in one gear. Yeah, he is a one-paced fighter. That's true. It's a very steady gear, but yeah, one gear. Busy Clergy says the only real threat for Inoue is Bam. Matt says Benavidez is going to have 25 pounds of more fat on him. He's not going to be Bivol fast at cruiserweight. But neither is Ramirez as fast as he was at light heavyweight when he fought Bivol. You know what I mean? So this is a slower version of Ramirez than the one that Bivol fought. So it kind of cancels out the speed that Benavidez might lose moving up to 200 pounds. Anyway, let's move on from Inoue versus Nakatani for now, because some fights have just been announced. You guys know about this one? Ben Whittaker fighting Richard Rivera. Now, some of you might be thinking, who? Richard Rivera? This is the guy that fought Badu Jack in Saudi Arabia a few years ago and lost a very close, some would say controversial decision. Richard Rivera calls himself Popeye. He's a bit odd. Right? He puts on some Popeye type outfit in the ring, and he's got a pipe and all that kind of stuff. Popeye obviously was a cartoon, a sailor who was great with his fists on the hard road like John Fury. But yeah, Richard Rivera acquitted himself very well that night against Badu Jack. He's only lost one other fight. He's 27-2. And the other fight was to a guy called Luis Tejada, a Dominican fighter who beat him in 2024. But that fight was in the Dominican Republic, and it was by majority decision. So if you're losing by majority decision to a Dominican fighter in DR, the Dominican Republic, then chances are that was a controversial loss. Do you know what I mean? Chances are you might have actually deserved to win the fight. I haven't seen it. I did look online, but I can't find any footage. But that's Richard Rivera. This is, I'm going to say, it's a step up. Now, a lot of people have a different version of what step up means. For some people, step up means you're going to fight an absolute killer. You're going to fight a world-class elite fight. No, a step up just means a step up from your last opponent. Somebody a bit better than your last opponent. Doesn't mean it's going to be someone 100 times better than your last opponent. That's not a step up then, is it? That's a whole leap up. That's a rocket ship up. No, we're talking about a step. One step up from his last opponent. Yeah, I would say Rivera is that. He's never been knocked out. The last guy Ben Whittaker fought had been knocked out 3 times. And 2 of those times were in the first 2 rounds. Rivera's never been knocked out. So, yeah, it's a bit of a step up for Ben Whittaker. This will be on the undercard of Zayas versus Boots, which is coming up on the 27th of June. You can see it there at the top, Barclays Center, Brooklyn. Ben Whittaker unleashed on the American audience. Yeah, they like all the showboating and whatnot, but have they picked the right opponent for him to be able to demonstrate all the showboating and the flash moves and maybe get the guy out of there with a spectacular KO? I suspect they haven't. So it's kind of interesting matchmaking by Eddie Hearn, because I think this is a guy who's going to be very stubborn in there and who may present some problems for Ben Whittaker. If Ben Whittaker goes in there and blasts this guy out the way he did his last couple, I'm telling you, that's a statement. That's a very, very good performance if he just blasts this guy out of there. Because again, the guy hung tough and pushed Badu Jack to the absolute brink when they fought at Cruiserweight, I believe it was. Yeah, it was Cruiserweight a few years ago. So, yeah, that's Ben Whittaker's next fight. He'll be happy that Matchroom are keeping him busy, and he'll certainly be happy that he's getting an opportunity to fight out in the United States. This will be for the WBC Silver light heavyweight title, so it's a ranking match at 175. What do you guys make of this one? Joey says, I want to see Whittaker versus Craig Richards soon. Yeah, that's a good fight. I'd like to see Whittaker versus Willie Hutchinson. Wave says, I think it goes to points. Stu the Q says, for all Whittaker's showboating, he's being matched so slow. He obviously struggles with inner belief. And that's all a cover. Okay? Nissan Warrior says, it's an alright matchup to be fair. Has to fight top 10 fighters within a year though. Rye Bread says, Whittaker versus Hutchinson is a good shout. Yeah, I think that's a logical next step to put him in with Hutchinson because while Hutchinson is a pretty good, fringe world level fighter, he's not really a puncher. I'm not saying he's got no power, but he's not, a serious puncher. He's a tricky guy. He's skillful. So I would say, yeah, stick him in with Willie Hutchinson, or maybe even Zach Parker, because a lot of people feel like Zach Parker beat Joshua Buatsi. And interestingly enough, Andy Lee, the trainer of Ben Whittaker, seems keen. I mean, some people might argue that he's just clout chasing, but is Andy Lee really the type of guy to clout chase? You tell me. He seems keen on putting Whittaker in against Anthony Yarde sooner rather than later. I'd like to see it. I don't think it's a ridiculous step up. I think it's very reasonable. Otto Livingston says Lyndon Arthur. That'll be okay. Wave says, see Jalalov news, Hatman. Yeah, I saw somebody in the Element group mention that Jalalov's fighting on an undercard coming up. They tried to make a fight between him and Sol Dakers, but Dakers apparently turned it down. Didn't offer him enough money, presumably, for such a dangerous assignment. Yeah, I agree, Railway Boxing fan. Whittaker versus Yarde could be a main event at the Copper Box or Wembley Arena. Indeed. Matt says Ben is fringe world level at best. We shall see. I think he's got a lot of athletic ability. I think his power is improving. And once Bivol and Beterbiev have either moved up or retired, and who knows whether Benavidez will come back down to 175, the division could be wide open. Joey says, is Yarde a shot fighter? I think he's getting close to it, personally, because he really put up very little resistance against David Benavidez. I thought the game plan was awful, and he didn't really look like he had much appetite for battle. He showed a lot more appetite for battle against Kovalev and Beterbiev, but against Benavidez, he just, didn't seem like he wanted it that much. I'm not saying he didn't want it at all, but it didn't seem like he had the kind of grit against Benavidez that he showed in the Kovalev fight. Telstar says Yarde looks like a sacrificial lamb at the moment. And that's the thing. Whenever Yarde steps up and takes on these killers, he always takes a terrible beating. Yeah, he went out on his shield against Kovalev and Kovalev and Beterbiev. I mean, you could say he went out on his shield against Benavidez too, but he really didn't fight to the bitter end against Benavidez the way he did against the previous two. But he took, ultimately, a terrible beating in all three of those fights. Anyway, let's move on from this announcement. Another fight that just got announced is this one right here. Adam Azim versus Steve Claggett. What do you guys think of this fight? I can't really say this is much of a step up for Azim. Is it even a step up at all? Is it a step sideways from the likes of Kurt Scooby and Sergey Lipinets? Claggett went the distance with Teofimo Lopez a few years ago. He's 40-8. So we're talking about a fringe contender slash tough journeyman in Steve Claggett, based in Canada. He's taking on Adam Azim on May 30 at the Wembley Arena. You can see the last 6 bouts for both guys on screen right now. There was that loss for Claggett against Teofimo Lopez in 2024. Didn't fight at all in 2025. He scored a victory earlier on this year over a guy called Alejandro Rodriguez. What do you guys make of this one? And I've been impressed by Azim actually over the past, let's say, 18 months. I think there's been tremendous improvement there. I like the fact that he isn't just a long-range fighter. He's got an inside game too. He's fast. He hasn't shown any vulnerability yet as far as punch resistance, although I haven't seen a big puncher hit him on the chin yet. O'Hara Davis is a big puncher, but he never caught Adam Azim. Seagar says, not a bad fight. Claggett is a tough opponent, never been stopped, but he is a journeyman. Matt says, Claggett gave Teo issues, tons of them. So, yeah, Matt says it's a good fight. Fernie G says, Azim will get 12 rounds of experience for sure. Studa Q says, I can see Whitaker eventually challenging for a world title once, maybe twice, but I don't see him winning against the current cream. I mean, maybe that's what Ben Whitaker and Matchroom are waiting for. Maybe they're waiting for Beterbiev and Bivol to exit the stage. The problem is, Ben Whitaker isn't exactly a spring chicken. He's in his late 20s. Railway Unboxing fan says, is Adam Azim the only fighter Ben Shalom has? The only fighter of note, yeah. That's it. He's got Adam Azim and then a bunch of fighters that nobody really cares about. No disrespect to Fraser Clark. He's still with Ben Shalom. And there's a bunch of female fighters who, the less said about the better. I'm more interested in Zurdo Benavidez, to be honest, than Inoue Nakatani. I'm interested in both fights. I watch both fights, but if I had to prioritize one over the other, it would be Zurdo versus Benavidez. Studa Q says, I think Willie Hutchinson cripples Whitaker with mind games. I don't know, man. Willie Hutchinson is so weird. I just think Ben Whitaker would be baffled and probably just laugh at him. Because Hutchinson is just such a weird guy. Whenever he's anywhere near a microphone, it's so cringe listening to him. Tyson Fury, he is not. When it comes to the gift of the gab and the mind games, he is no Tyson Fury. He likes to talk, but he just comes across as really weird and awkward. I wouldn't say Nakatani's an easy matchup for Inoue, but I definitely don't think he's on the same level. You got James Clifford, he says, hold on, isn't Popeye a cruiserweight? Yes, he was fighting at cruiserweight when he squared off with Badu Jack. In fact, let me look up Popeye's record here to see if he's had fights at light heavyweight before. One second here, folks. Just getting his box rec up. Here we go. Richard Rivera, aka Popeye. Yeah, he fought Badou Jack at cruiserweight back in 2022. But since 2023, he's been campaigning mostly at light heavyweight. I mean, there's a few fights here where he's fought in the low 180s, but most of the fights have been at 175. And going further back through his career, he has predominantly been a 175-pound fighter. A lot of his fights in the low 180s were actually on or below the 175-pound limit. So he appears to be kind of a big light heavyweight / small cruiserweight. A lot of guys get caught in that no man's land, you know, because the gap in weight between light heavyweight and cruiserweight is so huge, 25 pounds. So yeah, I don't think fighting at 175 here against Whittaker is going to be an issue for him. His last fight was, let me see here. Actually, he's been out the ring for a long time. His last fight was in January 2025. Yeah. So he's been out the ring over a year. But that fight, he weighed in at 173 pounds. His last fight, Popeye, January 2025, over a year ago, weighed in at 173. So he shouldn't struggle to make weight against Whittaker, I wouldn't have thought. All right, and another fight that's just been announced there. What do you guys think of this one? Chris Billam-Smith versus Ryan Riziki. Riziki is a Canadian fighter. Some of you may remember he had a barn burner back in the days at Bridgerweight against, God, what's the guy's name now? Why have I forgotten his name? Oscar Rivas, excuse me, the Colombian heavyweight who fought Dylan White back in the days. Oscar Rivas. Ryan Riziki had a barn burner with Rivas, a real slugfest. So he's a very, very tough guy, Ryan Riziki. This is going to be a very, very tough, grueling fight for both men. Chris Billam-Smith isn't a very difficult guy to hit. He's fought a lot of bruisers. Brandon Glanton's a bruiser. He's taken his fair share of licks. Masterneck was giving him the business. Ramirez obviously gave him the business. So he's losing brain cells at a rapid rate, and he's going to lose even more here against Ryan Riziki. This is a good fight. It's a tough, tough matchup. Both guys come forward, throw big shots. And of course, this is Chris Billam-Smith's first fight under Zuffa. Busy Clergy says, you're not particularly keen on the lighter weight classes, are you? Yeah, not as keen as I am on, let's say, 135 and above. Galaxy Edit says, why is it 10 rounds? Well, I guess because it's not any kind of championship fight. You know, traditionally, if there's no belt on the line, then fights are normally over 10 rounds. Unless it's like a special attraction with two real superstar fighters, then they'll make it over 12 sometimes. But traditionally, if there's no belt, be it a world title, a British title, European title, intercontinental, you know, all these silly trinkets they make up. If it doesn't have something like that on the line, then it's normally 10 rounds. Hence, rounds 11 and 12 being referred to as the championship rounds, because there's a championship on the line. You know, one of the criticisms that people have made about Zuffa is that if they match boxers consistently tough, the way they match UFC fighters, the boxers are going to have very short careers. Because boxers take a lot more head punches than MMA fighters do. So it's not really humane even to match boxers consistently tough the way you match fighters in the UFC. A brain-busting fight. Rye Bread says Fury AJ should be 12. I'm sure it will be 12. Because it's a special attraction kind of fight. You know, with two-time, former two-time world champions, massive attractions. I'm sure it will be a 12-round fight. Although some of you guys may remember when David Haye fought Derek Chisora back in the days, that was a 10-rounder. You guys remember that? I think Haye managed to get it cut to 10 rounds. I think originally they were going to do 12, but Haye applied some pressure somewhere and got it cut to 10. Exactly as Rybread said there, in MMA you can get submitted and fight 2 weeks later. And even with regards to the punches in MMA, because it's such small gloves, 4-ounce little mitts, hard little mitts, fighters don't tend to take as many punches before they get knocked out, right? Or get knocked down. Whereas in boxing, because of the bigger gloves, fighters take more, and therefore the brain rattles and impacts on the inside of the skull more often throughout a fight. And that's where brain damage can occur. I mean, brain damage always occurs in every fight, but it's just the degree, right? How much brain damage? Every time you get hit, you're losing brain cells. Railway and Boxing fan says, I remember Joyce versus Chisora was 12 rounds, then it went down to 10 rounds. Did it? Was that a 10-rounder, not a 12-rounder? Well, Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Miller was a 10-rounder. So yeah, generally, if it's not a title fight and there's no superstars involved, it'll be a 10-rounder. And also with Zuffa, they did say they were going to do something a bit different with the rounds. So maybe they want to be more strict on it only being 10 rounds if it's a non-championship fight. Because in UFC, it's 3 rounds for non-championship fights, 5 rounds for championship fights. And they're pretty strict with that as far as I'm aware. I quite like the idea. A lot of people have proposed this over the past few years. But I quite like the idea of having 15-round fights for undisputed. And if you were concerned about safety, 15-round fights, you could limit it to certain weight classes. Again, just for undisputed. Nissan Warrior says, I remember you saying AJ was not confident or shell-shocked against Dubois. I'm paraphrasing. You don't think it's more because of AJ stupidly looking down on Dubois? No, I don't. I think AJ was terrified. I think the whole idea of him looking down on Dubois was him trying to psych himself up. I think the evidence of how AJ really felt was at the weigh-in when he turned to the crowd and asked them to pray for him. I mean, this is a guy, 2-time heavyweight champion, all that experience, going up against a less experienced guy, and he's asking people to pray for him. That was a telltale sign right there. On the way to the ring, he looked nervous. In the ring before the opening bell, he looked nervous. When the first bell went for round 1, he looked terrified. He was rushing his punches. He was making loads of mistakes. This is what happens when someone's nervous. When they're not calm in the moment, they make loads of mistakes. So, no, I don't think he underestimated Dubois at all. He'd sparred Dubois plenty of times. Dubois had put him over in the gym years ago when Dubois was only about 17 or 18. I don't think AJ underestimated him in the slightest. I just think he was scared. Busy Clergy says, since when does Zuffa care about the fighters? They are just expendable short fuses. Do I think it will be the same against Fury? No, I don't. I don't think it will be the same against Fury because Fury's not the kind of puncher Dubois is. He's not as aggressive. And the last time AJ shared a ring with Fury, it might have been the only time they shared a ring. In the words of Tyson Fury, AJ beat him up. And I know people will think that's years ago, it's sparring, it doesn't mean anything. I'm sure it doesn't mean anything, but it often means something to the fighters. Whether it's misplaced confidence or not, many fighters take a lot from sparring. I mean, an example of when it was misplaced confidence is when Filip Hrgović fought Dubois. He was saying how I battered Dubois in sparring. This is going to be easy. Fighters do take, not always, but some fighters, a substantial amount of them, they do take confidence from how they do against certain guys in sparring. And I've always got the impression that the job that AJ did in sparring against Fury all those years ago has stayed in his mind and made him confident of that fight. If that's not the case, why did AJ mention it when Fury called him out ringside after the Makhmudov fight? You guys hear that part where AJ said, yeah, when I bashed you up in the gym when we were kids? It's always stayed in AJ's mind, that sparring session. So I think he's drawing a lot of confidence from that, and I don't think he'll be as scared against Fury as he was against Dubois. Do I think AJ Fury will get the same number of views as Jake Paul, Mike Tyson? No, I don't. Not globally. I think it might actually do more views in the UK, but globally, and Netflix is obviously a global platform, it won't do as many views as Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. What do you guys think, though? Some people are going to say that's sad that a YouTuber like Jake Paul and a washed-up old granddad in Mike Tyson can do more views than, Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. But it just speaks to the age we live in now. Got these content creators that garner these enormous followings like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, who I would say is probably the most popular fighter in history over the long term. I would say at Muhammad Ali's peak, he was probably more popular than Mike Tyson at his peak, at his respective peak. But Ali's popularity hasn't had the same longevity as Mike Tyson's popularity. Bear in mind, the Ali era and the Mike Tyson era are not that far apart. Mike Tyson's prime was in the mid-1980s. Ali's prime was in the 60s, but of course he had a second prime, if you will. He wasn't as good in the 70s as he was in the 60s, but he had a second reign, let's just call it that. So Ali's second reign was in the mid-70s. Mike Tyson's first reign was in the mid-80s. It's only a decade apart. So, yeah, I would say Ali at his peak was more popular than Tyson at his peak. But Tyson's popularity has stood the test of time, and so many subsequent generations have become, dazzled by him and enthralled by him. Loads of young, aspiring fighters today copy Mike Tyson. They want to be like Mike Tyson. They want to fight like him. They want to pull off his moves. They want to, do you know what I mean? You don't really see young fighters feeling that way about Muhammad Ali these days. The Ali hype, or let me not say hype, the Ali inspiration died off in the 90s. So a lot of fighters in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s were inspired by Muhammad Ali. They tried to fight like Ali. You even had some guys in a really creepy way, like Larry Donald, who literally tried to be Ali. He literally tried to talk like him. I mean, Larry Donald's from Ohio, but he would put on a Kentucky accent, like a Louisville accent, and he would recite poetry, and it was very, very strange. The only thing I can compare it to would be maybe Adrian Broner back in the days when he was trying to be Floyd Mayweather. Yeah, Larry Donald tried to be Muhammad Ali. It was very, very weird. Larry Donald was a heavyweight contender back in the 1990s. He fought on in, well into the 2000s. But yeah, the Ali inspiration, the people that were inspired by Ali, the fighters that were inspired by him, I would say that died off in the 90s. June Sports says there's a generation of younger people who think Mike is an actor. That's right, AJ. Mike Tyson's brand is so strong. Black Dynamite says they all tried the Ali poetry. So, to just give you an example of fighters that were inspired by Muhammad Ali, I mean, during Ali's era, his own brother that used to fight was inspired by him. His sparring partner, Jimmy Ellis, was inspired by him. Larry Holmes, another one of his sparring partners, was inspired by him a lot stylistically. There were fighters in the 80s like Big John Tate, Greg Page. They were inspired by him. Tyrell Biggs, again, another Ali clone. James Tillis, another one. Lennox Lewis was somewhat inspired by Ali. He always said Ali was his favorite fighter coming up, although not really an Ali clone at all. But he could do his little Ali thing at times, Lennox Lewis. In the lighter weights, Prince Nassim was inspired by Ali. Ray Leonard was inspired by Ali. And I've already mentioned Larry Donald. So many fighters were inspired by him. I mean, Roy Jones was inspired by Muhammad Ali. Roy Jones' style a lot more. I mean, Ali's style was flashy, but Roy Jones took flashy to the whole next level. He was inspired by Ali too. So many fighters from the 60s through to the 90s were inspired by Ali. But after the 2000s, it all completely died off. But the people inspired by Mike Tyson, they're still around even today. B. Wayne says, Holyfield, Bowe, and Tyson were inspired by Ali. Well, I'm talking about stylistically. Mike Tyson certainly wasn't stylistically inspired by Ali. I'm talking about, style-wise. Holyfield wasn't really either. You don't really... I mean, Riddick Bowe, maybe a little bit. He tried to, be a bit of an Ali character to some extent, and stylistically a little bit. maybe the 70s version of Ali was more of what Riddick Bowe was inspired by. Certainly not the 60s version. Riddick Bowe couldn't move like that. Mark says Larry Donald trying to be like Ali was probably the reason Riddick Bowe punched him at their press conference. And again, Larry Donald is from Ohio, but he would talk in this Louisville, Kentucky accent. Had he even been to Louisville, Kentucky? I don't know, bro. but he did all the poetry and everything. It was so weird. Bernie G says, funny enough, Partridge claimed to be named after Tyson, but fights more like Ali. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Larry the Beastmaster. That's what he told Riddick Bowe. I'm the Beastmaster. What do I think of conservatives hating on Ali showboating? Well, let's not call them conservatives. It was just like hardcore racism back in the 1960s. I mean, people used to scream the N-word at Ali on a regular basis during his fights when he was coming up. Even when he fought Sonny Liston. There were all sorts of N-words flying when he was fighting Sonny Liston. So it was just, a very, very racist time. And Ali was defiant in the face of all that racism. Peter says, Mr. Gaslight, nuke Partridge. All right, that's a good one. Interestingly, I just saw an interview with one of Muhammad Ali's ex-wives. And she revealed something very interesting about Joe Frazier. Because there's this famous story of when Joe Frazier lent Muhammad Ali money. But actually, Muhammad Ali had also lent Joe Frazier money previously. When Ali was flush for money, I guess in the 60s, before he was exiled from boxing, he apparently had lent Joe Frazier money, and they'd both lent each other money back and forth, because the narrative that we're normally told in the mainstream is that Frazier lent Ali this money when he was broke, and Ali repaid him by slagging him off in the media. But that's not really what happened. They were friends, they were lending each other money on various occasions. Ali lent Frazier money, Frazier lent Ali money. And then Ali told Frazier, I'm gonna start cussing you out in the media, but it's just for the promotion of the fight. Don't get upset. So he forewarned him, I'm going to do this. It was what it was. I'm trying to see what Waved said there, with what Luca is responding to. He said, really, Waved? Okoli is finished anyway. Which comment is he responding to here? I'm looking for Wave's comment. I don't see it. What did Wave say about Okoli? Railway Unboxing fan says, what are your thoughts on the David Haye controversy? I mean, the fact that it's even controversy is a measure of how hideously irrational normie TV is. He's on I'm a Celebrity, and he's been on some morning television chat shows and all that kind of stuff, and they're all outraged. You know, people love to be outraged by nothing. This is why I avoid all of that kind of normie television programming and stuff. Not that I watch TV, I don't even live in the UK now, but do you know what I mean? Even online, I just avoid all that stuff because it's just so stupid. It's so infantile and devoid of logic. I can't do it. I would say I feel for David Haye, but I don't really, because he put himself in that position and he knew what he was getting into. To be around a bunch of, normie idiots. So there you go. I'm sure he's getting a bag. Big up Chili Beef. What are my thoughts on the Aziz fight? Spoke about it earlier on in the stream. Seems like a decent fight. That tends to be the general consensus of people here in this chat. Yeah, he is quite a funny personality. Shout out to Chainsaw. Wave says the peptide a collie was caught with can only be in your system if it's injected. Yeah, that came out at the very start, right? But I'm not sure why the being injected part is what convinces you that he's guilty. Because lots of things that are legal are injected. You can have painkillers injected into your hands and feet. David Haye, for example, had painkilling injections in his feet. And various fighters have had painkilling injections in their hands. So just because something's injected, that doesn't mean it's, sinister or illegal. But with Lawrence Okolie, I just think the most concerning thing is the fact that this is a guy who's very experienced, a two-weight world champion, an Olympian. The idea that he would have something injected into his elbow without first clearing it with VADA seems very unlikely. Do you know what I mean? Like, why would he do that? Ayed says, isn't Haye taking legal action against ITV? Is he? I wasn't aware of that. Vibes Not Found says, if Haye beat Klitschko and retired undefeated, would he have been able to cross over in America like he was trying to? I don't think so. Because Klitschko was not popular in America. Not particularly well known. AJ says, it's funny seeing the shock and disbelief in Haye's face over the backlash on his thoughts. Yeah, it's as if Haye has forgotten how asinine and vapid and illogical the average television celebrity is, the average normie television celebrity, and how diabolically mind-numbing mainstream TV is and the kind of audience that it attracts, especially things like Strictly Come Dancing and I'm a celebrity. I mean, it attracts the absolute zombies of society. Shows like that. So why is David A even surprised? You know what I mean? He's been around long enough. He should know. Oh, apparently Hayes suing ITV for 10 million. I hope he wins. All right, speaking of random topics, I would like you guys to participate in a bit of research that I'm doing. All right? Let me just show you. So I'm doing some research with regards to dating. Okay? And this research is for a upcoming Patreon episode, which I will be recording shortly. I'm sure many of you have heard of these studies and the statistics that come from them with regards to dating. Women are significantly more selective than men on Tinder, and it's reflected across most dating apps, with studies suggesting they like or swipe right on only about 4.5 to 14% of men. This behavior contrasts sharply with men, who tend to like roughly 46 to 62% of women, resulting in a much higher and more concentrated competition for the top 20% of male profiles. While women like fewer men, heterosexual women have a much higher match success rate, approximately 52% on their profiles, compared to heterosexual men, around 16%. So that means, on average, when a woman likes somebody on a dating app like Tinder, half of the time, 50% of the time, they get a match. Whereas with men, on average, if they swipe 100 women, only 16 of them will match with them. That's the average. Women swipe right far less often, yet they tend to receive many more matches than men. So my research is kind of in this type of field, right? Since let's average it out, let's say about 7%. So women find about 7% of men attractive, at least on dating apps, right? About 7% of them, which is quite low. So the question I asked in a poll that I did on my Patreon page, what percentage of women do you find physically attractive enough to date? This is purely based on physical attraction. We're not counting personality, behavior, culture, etc. Just based on physical attraction. What percentage of women, and for this particular poll, I'm saying of your own race, because I've got a couple of other polls which ask the question in a slightly different way, because I also want to go into the solutions, right? For people, for men specifically, that are finding it difficult to find a woman. Some guys choose to date outside their race to broaden their options, etc. While for other guys, that's not really an option because they don't find other races attractive, or they don't think they're going to be culturally compatible, etc., or ideologically compatible with people from other races, so they choose not to do it. They have to find other solutions if they're struggling to find someone. But anyway, the first poll, and you can see the results, the current results on screen right now. What percentage of women do you find physically attractive enough to date? I'm not talking about physically attractive enough to smash when you're drunk. Physically attractive enough to actually get into a relationship with, something long term. What percentage? All right. And you can see that the vast majority of men on the poll so far would say that 50% or less, they find 50% or less women attractive. Okay. There's someone up there that has said that they find 90% of women attract 90%. Imagine you're walking down the street, you walk past 100 women. This guy finds 90 of them attractive. He must be an absolute savage. How many baby mums has he got? Must have lost count by now. 90% of women, that's crazy, bro. Yo, he must be unstoppable, that guy, whoever he is. And I'm sure most of you know someone like that, or some of you might actually be like that yourselves. Right? There are certain men who are absolute savages, bro. They will smash anything that walks. It doesn't matter what kind of swamp monster or mutant, it doesn't matter how ugly or beautiful, they will literally smash anything. Their libido is so insatiable that, yeah, no female is off limits. Certain men are like that. And and there's at least one person on this poll that apparently is like that. He finds 90% of women attractive. That's crazy, bro. Yo, he must have been put here to populate the earth all by himself. Yeah, we all have one friend who's like that. We all know that one guy who will literally mash down anything that walks. Business. Takes on all comers. As Telstar said there, to be fair, takes on all comers is minimum for an all-time great. Yo, wild. But yeah, I'd like you guys to participate in this poll. Uh, it's free. I've put this as a public post, so any of you guys can click the link in the description. Oh wow, Cold says he is that friend. He's that savage. So I'd like you guys to participate in this poll. The link is in the description to my Patreon page. Just head on over there, and this is what you will see when you try and vote. You'll see, where are we at? You'll see this, join for free. You just sign up. It takes a couple of seconds to, get a Patreon account. It's nothing. It doesn't cost you anything, etc., etc. It's just to be able to vote on free posts like this one, which is a public post. So yeah, head on over to my Patreon page. Link is in the description, and please help me out. I'm trying to get data for my research with regards to this dating topic. All right. So that was the first poll. I put 3 polls up earlier on today. You can see the results in a minute. I'd like more data. Currently, there's only 74 people that have voted on this poll. On this one, 72 votes. And this one is with regards to women of all races. See, the first one is, what percentage of women of your own race do you find physically attractive enough to date? The second one was, what percentage of women of all races do you find physically attractive enough to date? And the third poll here is, who are you more physically attracted to? Women of your own race or women of another race or races? And again, this is purely based on physical attraction. We are not counting personality, behavior, culture, or anything like that. Purely physical attraction. And 93 votes on that so far. 63% are most attracted to their own race. 37% are attracted to a different race or races. So I'd like you guys to head on over to my Patreon page. If you don't already have a Patreon account, just sign up for a free account and place your votes. And you can also leave comments on this. It's not behind a paywall. This is a public post. It's a public poll. All right. So you'll really be helping me out collecting data on this particular subject so I can then be in a better position to do my analysis of it and give my thoughts with regards to this dating topic. All right. So help me out. Head on over to the Patreon page and participate in this poll. Again, it's a free poll. It's a free public thing. Not going to cost you anything. Wave says, dating apps or see in person? Either or, both. women that you see anywhere. I mean, with dating apps, you have to be careful because there's loads of filters and stuff like that. um, yeah, I'm going to leave the polls up permanently. I'll close the poll at some point, but they'll stay up permanently. You'll be able to see the results permanently. Yeah, with regards to the last poll there that I showed you guys, um, as far as attraction, are you most attracted to your own race or another race? I would probably fit into a minority. I don't know how small the minority is. And I would say I fit into a minority because I'm very, very monoracially attracted, meaning there are very, very, very few women, non-black women, that I find attractive. And I'm talking about a tiny number of them that I find attractive, non-black women. It's a very small amount. I'm not even joking. When it comes to non-black women, it's well below 1% that I would find physically attractive. Well below. I mean, literally, if I walk down a street and I see 100 Asian women, like Indian, Pakistani women, or 100 white women, it would be less than 1% that I'd find attractive. With certain other groups, maybe like Latinas, it might be a bit higher. With, I don't know, Filipinos might be a bit higher, but generally, I have very low attraction to non-black women, very low. And it's been that way my whole life. And of course, the non-black women who I do find attractive tend to be non-black women who have kind of stereotypically black features. Full lips, curvaceous body, um, rounded facial features and stuff like that. So if I were to show you like a non-black woman that I find attractive, you would say, wow, I can see why a guy that likes black women would be attracted to this particular non-black woman because she has a lot of features that are very common or prominent with black women. Yeah, Taylor Blair says it's okay, Hatman. That other guy has got the other 99% covered. Yo, I want to find out who that is. I'm going to look in my analytics to try and find out who the guy is that says he finds 90% of women attractive. I need to ask that guy some questions. How many kids have you got, first and foremost? How many dozen children have you got? I remember there was a guy, uh, and he's basically the uncle of a friend of mine who I used to work with in security. And we were working in Louis Vuitton. And there was all sorts of girls in there. There was like white girls, Japanese girls. Um, there was like one black girl and a bunch of different girls in there. And there was one Japanese girl who was hideous. I mean, she looked like Mr. Miyagi. There was another Japanese girl who was very cute. Um, so there was one Japanese girl who was very, very, quite attractive, relatively tall as well. She must have been at least, I don't know, 5'7". She's like an attractive Japanese girl. But then there was this other Japanese girl who literally looked like Mr. Miyagi. She was not attractive at all. But my friend's uncle, who was working there at the time, you know how guys do, they have conversations about which female staff members they would smash. And my friend's uncle, Jamaican obviously, said, and this is his exact words, he said, I would trouble any of them. Trouble meaning he would smash. It's an old school vernacular. I would trouble any of them. And I was like, any of them? Well, even that one there that looks like Mr. Miyagi. And he was like, A hole's a hole, bro. I was like, nah, what? You trouble Mr. Miyagi over there. He's like, yup. Some of them Jamaican man, bro. I don't know what they're really on. He said, I would trouble any one of them. And I swear some of them yard man, they take pride in having the ability to smash anything. They take pride in it. Chrissy G says, I'm the same as you, Hatman. I only find my own race attractive. I mentioned that in school years ago and was badly ridiculed about it. Omar says, Hatman, my barber messed up my cut. Should I wear a hat or just shave it all off? Well, how low is your hair? If it's low, you might as well just shave it all off. If it's relatively long, might be able to salvage it somehow. Wear a hat, wait till it grows a bit. JR says, I've got a Jamaican friend and his dating history is literally like Crime Watch. Abdul says, man would call Theresa May a baddie. Yeah, I want to say that I have to imagine, it may not always be like this, but I have to imagine that the higher a man's libido, right, the higher a man's sex drive, the less fussy he is about, women. The higher the percentage of women he's attracted to, the higher his libido. So a guy who has a crazy high libido, like a dog on heat, I mean, he's the 90% guy. He's the guy that finds 90 or 95% of women attractive. He's an unstoppable force. You know somebody who was like that? A famous person? ODB. Any of you guys remember ODB from the Wu-Tang Clan? He was like that. He would literally smash anything. Absolutely anything. Man's libido was off the scale. When he was in prison, he was. I remember in some interview he said when he was in prison, he was jerking his joystick so many times a day that he actually mashed it up. like certain men had to have a word with him. Like you can't be jerking your joystick that often. You know what I mean? Like calm down, bro. AJ says, "Have you watched the film Shame with Michael Fassbender?" No, I haven't. What's that film about? Hey, it's a Shame is a crazy film. Well, interestingly, right? I remember a television show probably decades ago. You know, when you're old, you lose track of how long ago things were. So something that feels like 2 years ago to me was probably like 15 years ago. But anyway, I remember there was a show on one of the mainstream channels in the UK which was exploring beauty, right? Exploring the subject of beauty. And the conclusion that they came to at the end of the program is that generally, in all cultures, mixed race people are perceived as being more beautiful and more physically attractive than other races. And that was a mainstream show that came to that conclusion. If you say that, let's say, black people are the most attractive or white people are the most attractive, you get loads of backlash. I always found that a bit odd. You know, there are some groups you're allowed to say they're more attractive than everyone, but other groups you're not allowed to say that. Obviously, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it's all subjective. Because there was back when I was still on Facebook, I said, we're in a conversation somehow, and I said that I generally don't find mixed race girls that attractive. And there was one guy who was kind of a, left wing type guy, and he was totally outraged by what I said. I was like, whoa, why is that controversial? Like, I can't help who I'm attracted to and not. I don't choose the way my hormones feel. You know what I mean? Like the way my hormones react to some people over others. Don't have any control over that. Busy Clergy says it's a shameful film, meaning very bad. Okay, exceptionally poor film, says Busy Clergy. Okay, Ayed says it's about sex addiction and okay. Taylor Blair says unstoppable force smashing all the unmovable objects. And normally that guy, right? You know the guy in every friend group that will literally smash anything that walks. That guy has normally got some kind of nickname in the friend group. And it's usually a nickname inspired by the fact that he will smash anything. WPW says, Hapman, so have you ever been with a non black woman then? And when I say non black, I don't class light skinned women as black. No, I've never slept with or had a relationship with a non black woman in my life. Never. Someone says the music is gone. Is it? I think it's just in between tracks. It should still be there. I see it playing it. AJ disagrees with Busy Clergy. He says it's a very good film. I'll check it out and give you my thoughts after I've watched it. Although I don't really like movies that have got loads of sex in them. Do you know what I mean? I find it annoying. I personally feel like there's too many, and I'm spelling the word out here for the sake of the algorithm. There's too many sex scenes in modern movies now. It's just like they always just fast forward them. Like, what? Come on, man. They're unnecessary a lot of the time. Too many of them. That's one of the things that kind of annoyed me about Game of Thrones, especially the first season or the first couple of. It's like there was way too many sex scenes, man. Like, come on, man. Pointless. Damn, Arco says, not gonna lie, I'd crash 70% of crashable gyal. Well, we're not talking about crashable, we're just talking about all girls. Yeah? What percentage of women would you smash? If you're walking down the road, you pass 100 women, what percentage of them, how many of them would you actually smash? If you're saying 70 of them out of 100, you're a savage. You're a straight savage. When the asteroid hits, you're the one that God is going to make survive to repopulate the earth. You're the guy that will be chosen by God when after the asteroid hits and the earth needs repopulating. June Sports says 85%. You can't be serious, bro. 85%? 85%. You can't be serious, bro. Some of you men are animals. CJ says, yes, Hatman, big respect. Big up CJ. We're not talking about if they're all paying. We're talking about all shapes and sizes, right? If you walk down the street, you walk past 100 women, what percentage of them do you find attractive? That's the point. Obviously, everyone's going to smash 100% of paying women. That's not the question. The question is, what percentage of all women? What percentage of all women would you find attractive enough to be in a relationship with? Not just smash, because we've all smashed, women who aren't exactly the most attractive on a little one night thing. But I'm talking about what percentage of women, of all women, are attractive enough for you to actually be in a relationship with? Benjamin says 12%. Busy Clergy says 5%. Benjamin says actually 5%. Yeah, because if you actually walk down the street and just make a mental note of the women that you see that are attractive enough for you to want to be in a relationship with them, for most of you, you're going to find it's actually a very small percentage. You'll find yourself saying, nope, 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 nope. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yes, 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 that one. Nope, nope, nope. That's what you'll find yourself doing, unless you're an absolute savage. Yeah, a certain savage man will be walking down the street like, yep, 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 yep. Those are the kind of man, them type of savage man are the same ones who walk through the shopping mall and they'll say, yep, 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 yep. And they'll be so aroused, they'll have to go to the bathroom to relieve themselves. Them type of man there. Hmm? And I'm not talking about going to the bathroom to urinate. You know what I mean? Like, certain men are a bit off. They can be out and about and they're like a dog on heat. I have to go find a bathroom to jerk the joystick. You know what I mean? Like, just to run through the polls again that I'm doing on my Patreon page, it's free to vote. Join for free to cast your vote in this poll. Completely free. There's nothing to be charged for. Anyone can sign up for a Patreon account to access the free members content on that platform. So if you don't have a Patreon account, head on over there, sign up for a free account, and vote on my public poll because it's part of the research that I'm doing here. What percentage of women of your own race do you find physically attractive enough to date? You can see the current results in a minute. Second poll, what percentage of women of all races do you find physically attractive enough to date? This is purely based on physical attraction. We're not counting personality, behavior, culture, etc. And the third poll is, who are you more physically attracted to? Women of your own race or women of another race or races? Again, this is purely based on physical attraction. We're not talking about personality, behavior, culture, and so on. Currently, the results are 63% say their own race, 37% say another race or races. So yeah, I'd like you guys to head on over to my Patreon page and participate in this free poll, this public poll. In order to vote, you'll have to create a Patreon account, but it won't cost you anything. You can see here, join for free. So I really appreciate it if you guys could head on over there and help me in my research by participating in this poll. You're missing the point though, music playlist. We are not talking about the personality. We're just talking about the one specific category. Do they have enough? Is there enough physical attraction there for you to even consider that this person could be your girlfriend or wife or whatever? Before you've even found out about the personality, just based on the looks, you see the person just based on the looks, could this person, if they pass all the other tests, have enough attractiveness for me to want to be in a relationship with them? The box says, damn, I didn't get no notification. And this is the conversation I entered the stream to. That's okay, music playlist. Busy Clergy says, as maturity progresses, the percentage gradually diminishes. Indeed, tuned into a night flight. Arco says, strictly physical attraction only. I'd say 20% or so. Yeah, I reckon for most men, it'd be 20% or less. If they actually went out into the street and did an exercise of consciously counting the number of women they're physically attracted enough to actually be in a relationship with them, if they went out in the street and said, okay, yep, yep, no, 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 I think the percentage will be lower than most men realize before they've actually carried out that exercise. But I think what the Tinder statistics show, the research on Tinder, if I could just go back to that for a second, So this here, right? Women are significantly more selective than men on Tinder, with studies suggesting they like or swipe right on only about 4.5 to 14% of men. This behavior contrasts sharply with men who tend to like roughly 46 to 62% of women, resulting in a much higher, more concentrated competition for the top 20% of male profiles. I think one of the reasons that men swipe so much on women on things like Tinder is because it's not the majority of men on there to begin with. Number two, men are more willing than women to sleep with individuals who they're not particularly attracted to. Yeah. Women are far less likely to do that unless there's something really special about the guy. Yeah. Men are far more willing to drop their standards just to smash something. They're far more willing to drop their standards in terms of looks just to get a leg over. And a lot of people that go on these dating apps, that's all they're looking for. It doesn't mean, yeah, they cast a wide net, exactly as Chainsaw said. Men will cast a wide net on dating apps. And once the wide net is cast, whatever fish they catch, they'll weed out the ones that they are having second thoughts about, and they'll try and pick the best few of the bunch. That's what men will tend to do. They'll cast a wide net, see what they catch, filter out the worst ones, and keep the best ones. Dano says anything less than 10% is sus. Um, Possibly, but I don't know. I mean, you can't help what you're attracted to, right? I mean, for example, any of you guys seen the movie Boomerang? It's an extreme example, but Boomerang is my favorite Eddie Murphy movie. It came out in the early 90s, either late 80s or early 90s. And it's about this corporate guy, Eddie Murphy, who is a womanizer. And he's extremely picky about women, like to a crazy extent. So early on in the film, he hooks up with this beautiful woman and takes her back to his place, smashes. Then when they're in bed sleeping afterwards, in fact, he might go back to her place. I think he goes back to her place. But yeah, he goes back to her place, smashes. But when they're in bed sleeping afterwards, he pulls up the duvet, the covers, to have a look at her feet, and he finds that she's got messed up feet. But the rest of her is completely beautiful, just based on the messed up feet. He locks that girl off. He gets the hell up out of there and he locks her off. Now, some guys are going to be like that. They're going to be put off by things that a lot of other guys wouldn't be put off by. And maybe they can't help it, you know? Maybe they can't help it. Because there are a lot of women like that, by the way. There are a lot of women who are put off by the slightest little thing that they don't like about a guy, which essentially means that they are not attracted to more than 3%, 5% of guys. 95% are disqualified. You do find some guys who are like that, who are extremely, it doesn't mean they're suspect. It doesn't necessarily mean they're rainbow. They just have a very, very particular type when it comes to women. And, you know, the saying, beggars can't be choosers. These guys normally have the pick of the bunch, right? They're normally elite level guys who have only ever had beautiful women, the most beautiful, and that's what they're used to. And they can't go down from an absolutely immaculate woman, the kind of immaculate women they're used to. They can't have a regular woman. They're put off too easily. They've been conditioned to only be attracted to the absolute perfect women. Yeah, the percentage might be higher depending on place or country, which is why I did various versions of that same poll. Omar says, I get put off by bad teeth. Anyway, folks, gonna shut this one down. Please participate on my free public poll on Patreon so I can gather some data for my research and my upcoming Patreon episode regarding dating. I'd like to give a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were Surviving Sobriety, James Clifford, Busy Clergy, Supersized Fries, and Matt Borgerson. Big up, big up. Shout out to everyone else who joined the conversation. Fernie G as well. Did Fernie G? No, excuse me, it was Busy Clergy. I thought it was Fernie G too. Big up Fernie G anyway. James Clifford, Matt Borgerson, Surviving Sobriety, which is a great name. Supersized Fries. Yes, yes. Big up everyone. Until next time, take care, be good. People are saying still no music. That's weird. Because here the music is playing. Maybe it's because your volume is low. Anyway, take care, be good. Catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.